On this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, we get our reaction straight from the source of the Stefon Diggs trade. We hear from D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud. They talk about the addition to Stefon Diggs, to this team, and how they are not altering their draft board even with the offseason additions.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. If this is your first time, please subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts as well, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. Thank you to all of our returning listeners for the first, second, or 500th time. Thank you for coming back and continuing to support and watch and listen to the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman, and the man with the plan was live in the NRG Stadium during the press conference. Texans credentialed media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today we talk about Tank Dell and John Mechie both looking nice, according to CJ Stroud. You guys are going to want to hear that. D'Amico Ryans had an opportunity, right? And I believe it was somebody who hosted show asked him about not altering the Texans draft boards, even with the offseason additions that they've made to this team. So we'll get into that. And I think overall, I think it's important to start this show off with just hearing D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud speak about Stefon Diggs and what he can bring to this team.
We have not had an opportunity to hear from the man himself. And I'm waiting. But John, listeners and viewers out there, we had the second best thing, hearing from Coach D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud. And before I play the video, man, let me just be the first to say that you can get a sense of excitement. But not only do you get the sense of excitement, you can tell that D'Amico, CJ, tomorrow's show we'll get into Will Anderson Jr. This team believes that Stefon Diggs is going to be the missing piece to get this team over the hump in 2024.
Yeah, with Diggs, adding him is one of those guys I talked about. He's been a great player in this league for a long time, well respected. He's been a great teammate. He's been a leader, a captain. And, when you look at him and you watch the tape and you put it on, no one doubts the playmaker that he is, right? He changes games for the teams that he's been a part of, and we're anticipating the same thing for us.
He adds a ton of value, to that room. There's a lot of wisdom that he carries that I think he'll spread to other guys, and he's been really reaching out to really everybody, and I think that whole room in general is going to be great. I think we're all going to eat off each other. It's going to be very fun and very exciting, just to work with everybody in that room, and I'm very excited for it.
John, like I mentioned before I played that clip, man, you can get a sense that this team truly do believes that Stefon Diggs is going to be the missing piece to get them over the hump in 2024. Now, we're still trying to figure out what hump is that. Is it AFC? Is it Super Bowl? Is it winning everything? Is it, competing with Kansas City, with Baltimore? But throughout the whole entire press conference, as I'm sitting there inside NRG Stadium, there were certain things that I was picking up, just listening to other reporters, ask Coach D'Amico Ryans about Stefon Diggs, and the same thing with CJ Stroud later, but we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. But every time somebody asks Coach D'Amico Ryans about Stefon Diggs, he always used the term playmaker. And John, you know me, man, I go back to, the question that I asked him at the NFL Combine when I asked him, what are the attributes that you are looking for in terms of how you want to upgrade this wide receiving core? Wide receiving core, yes, it looked phenomenal with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Yes, a wide receiving core that already has some promise and some potential with Xavier Hutchinson, with John Mechie, a wide receiving core that already has some established veteran, even though they ain't step up at times when we would like them to, but you still had some established veterans in terms of Robert Woods and Noah Brown. And the one thing that he in some of the things that he said was the fact that he's looking for a playmaker, he's looking for a separator, and he's looking for somebody that can definitely help this team on third down. And John, everything that Coach DeMeco Ryan said he wanted in February, he basically said, I got it with this trade in Stefon Diggs. And I also like it how, to me at least, and I understand we got to see it on field. We got to see, at least in training camp. We got to see in voluntary OTAs when that starts. But to me at least, John, it seems like that they are not going to put Stefon Diggs in this is going to be the wide receiver, number one. We're going to have to find a way to work the offense around Stefon Diggs. If you go back and listen to every single answer that Coach DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, and even Will Anderson Jr. to a certain extent, every time they was asked about the addition of Stefon Diggs, how they feel he's going to, help this organization move forward, they use terms like we and us. And that's very important because they never once, outside the fact of CJ Stroud saying he was asleep during the time of the trade, so he was a couple hours behind, but those little adjectives that they use was very telling, man. And I think that is going to be the primary example as to why Stefon Diggs is definitely going to work here in the city of Houston, unlike what took place in Minnesota and Buffalo.
Yeah, you know what? I don't even want to count Minnesota against them. I think it's really just mainly Buffalo. Minnesota had a different way that they wanted to go, and they moved on from them. Got a first-rounder back, drafted Justin Jefferson, got Jettas, and may have the best wide receiver in the league. But I think it's funny for CJ. He was a little behind. He's still on that Cali time. But for Diggs, man, to me, it sounds like none of that noise from Buffalo and the alleged beef with Josh Allen matters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear them say value, right? You hear DeMeco Ryan say, well-respected, been a great teammate, has been a leader, been a captain. You look at him, and when you watch the tape, no one doubts the playmaker that he is, right? You hear from CJ Stroud. He adds a ton of value to that room, talking about the wide receiving group. There's a lot of wisdom that he carries that I think he'll spread to other guys. He's been reaching out to really everybody, and I think the whole room in general is going to be great. I think we're all going to feed off one another. Like, hear what they're saying. I don't think that they're going to be tiptoeing around like, oh, what type of player Stefon Diggs is.
Mm-hmm.
I think they know already, and I think they've known what type of player Stefon Diggs is. I mean, if you go back and watch the tapes and some of his reactions, look at Randy Moss, you look at T.O., you look at some of the Antonio Brown, right? You look at a lot of our great receivers in our generation. They've all been somewhat of prima donnas, but a lot of that is just fire for them wanting to win. And when they're not in a position to help their team win, yeah, you may see them act out a little bit. I guess we could say that, but I don't think it was necessarily just acting out for Stefon Diggs. I think that there's a real beef in Buffalo last year where whenever they changed coordinators and Josh Allen was, I don't want to say purposely, but missing Stefon Diggs, then you saw Stefon say, hey, man, we've been successful doing some of these things. Let's get to that. And when that didn't happen, then you saw them starting to butt heads, but I don't think any of that will matter in Houston. I think they like how fiery that he is. And again, a great leader. They talked about him in great ways. Diggs has also been a productive player with an up-and-coming quarterback in Josh Allen and helped stabilize his game as a quarterback. An aging vet like Case Keenum, an up-and-coming middle-of-the-pack quarterback like Kirk Cousins. There's value there for both C.J. Stroud as a quarterback, right? Because he's helped some of those other quarterbacks like Josh Allen get to another level. And I also think that there's value in bringing him into this wide receiving group. First and foremost, I can't talk about it enough. You add him to this group. Now you're looking at a more complete wide receiver unit. Now you're looking at a wide receiver unit that if all things click, they should be comparable to, not saying that they will, replicate, but comparable to that Bengals wide receiving group that helped the Bengals get to the Super Bowl a couple of seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he feels the need for a lot on his team in a couple of ways. You want a player that can create separation? Check. I mean, he's averaging nearly 3 yards per route ran separation-wise in the past couple of seasons. You want to play a playmaker? I think a guy that, in the last 2 seasons gave you 2,500 yards and 19 touchdowns fits the mold for a playmaker. Check. So he's going to fit right in here in Houston. And not only that, I don't question the leadership from Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I would have if this was 2 years ago and it was maybe Lovey or David Culley. And I would especially question the leadership if this was 2020 when we saw Stefon Diggs get traded to the Buffalo Bills that year. We also saw DeAndre Hopkins get traded to the Arizona Cardinals for nothing. Yeah, I would question if Bill O'Brien was still the head coach. But I do not question. I have no right to at this point. Nothing in me says I need to look into anything. I do not question the leadership from head coach DeMeco Ryans. He is a character guy who wants to win. And I think a guy like that, you do your homework on any player that's coming in. You understand what he brings to this table, to this team. There is value in a player that's giving you 2,500 yards in the last couple of seasons. Do we think he'll continue to 1,200, 1,300, 11? Will he be that for Houston? We don't know, but I don't question DeMeco Ryan, man. I really don't. And so if he says he's a leader, well respected, and all of those things above, I think Houston will be all right.
You're talking about doing your homework. My favorite part of the press conference, Coach DeMeco Ryans, did say that they turned on the tape, they studied, they liked what they saw. They say they had several discussions behind closed doors that he didn't really get into about, whether or not Stefon Diggs will be a fit here in the city of Houston, both on and off the field with the culture, not for the culture. But he said it came down to one decision that made them say, we're going to accept this trade. Coach DeMeco Ryan simply said, at the end of the day, you just need as many playmakers as possible. And he said it with a smile, and that's part of the reason why Stefon Diggs is a member of the Houston Texans today.
And he's absolutely right, guys. And again, I think that with Stefon Diggs, the one thing that I love the most about this trade as a reporter, as an analyst, as a guy that if I met you in person, we'll just be talking football like we're in the barbershop. And we'll get into this to close out the show, but I love now his addition, I think, is going to do wonders for Mechie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't worry about Tank Dell. I mean, he's going to go through the offseason program. He's getting healthier, of course. I didn't worry about Nico Collins, right? I honestly, I hadn't worried about Nico Collins in 2 seasons. You guys just didn't see how good he got in the sophomore year because of the quarterback play. But I didn't worry about that going into this season without Stefon. But I worried about wide receiver 3 and 4. Now I think Mechie would be a perfect wide receiver 4. And I also think the game he can soak up from Stefon Diggs. And just imagine those meetings where Diggs can say, this is how I beat this coverage. I mean, he does a very good job of getting open against zone. Does a very good job of beating man. This is how I beat this coverage against this corner. And Nico soaking that in. And then Tank and Mechie, and they're all just kind of working together. How are you able to be successful? How are you able to go out and have seasons of 1,500 yards, 1,200 yards, 1,400 yards, 1,100 yards? How were you able to do that stuff on? And this is how I did it. This is how I did it. This is how I did it. And from a receiver to quarterback standpoint, relationship-wise, CJ, this is how you can get your game to the next level. So a guy like that, man, it's the value that he brings. You kind of put up with some of the off the field outbursts on the sideline. You kind of it's okay because at the end of the day, he only wants what's best for the team. Listen, I think Stefon Diggs is going to do a great job of helping this offense, but this show was sponsored by BetterHelp. And listen, what's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Will you be like Stefon Diggs and create a video of just welcoming yourself to Houston? I thought that was pretty dope. Will you be like the Houston Texans and release a video, or would you watch the video of the hype train of the jersey release? What would you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Go for a run, take a nap. There's a lot of things we can do with an extra hour, and a lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. But the question, guys, is time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze in that special thing into your schedule is to know exactly what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with licensed therapists today, anytime, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. The best part about this is I got a discount code for you guys. Listen, if you're looking to make more time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp, visit betterhelp.com/locked on to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp/locked on to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. As you guys know, we're going to continue recapping the press conference that the Houston Texans had on Monday with Coach DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud, and Will Anderson Jr. John, as you know, man, probably over the last, 3 weeks, you and I have been trying to find a pattern as to what the Houston Texans are going to do in the draft. And we talked about this yesterday as well. And I mentioned how this draft is going to be different because this is the first draft that Nick Caserio is going to have where he is not trying to find foundational cornerstone players. He's going to be adding players to every single position, going back to, once again, what Coach DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio said at the NFL Combine in February. You know, their goal is to add depth at every single position. And to the point that you made on yesterday, you know, it's always good to make sure you have enough depth, especially after what we saw last year with that offensive line unit. And then on yesterday, I had an opportunity to ask Coach DeMeco Ryans, how much did the offseason acquisitions kind of change, or did it change what they wanted to do for the 2024 NFL draft?
When you look at the draft and how we approach it the same, right? We go through, evaluate all the positions, and try to have a good feel for the guys that we would like to add to our team. And, like, you know, just because we've added guys at a lot of different positions, that doesn't stop us from evaluating every position and looking at every avenue to continue to upgrade our team and continue to get our team better. So for the draft process, our process will be exactly the same. Who can we add to our team that adds value to our locker room, adds value to us on the field?
I love the fact that Coach DeMeco Ryans and the Texans, as of right now, they're not getting complacent given all the hype and all the additions that they have. But, John, it was very important for me to ask that question because I look at some of the positions that he talked about. Like I mentioned throughout this whole entire offseason, this is a head coach who loves to add value, to add depth to that defensive front. From the outside looking in, I'm looking at it from a standpoint, I don't think he needs to add another player to that defensive line unit. You know, you went out and added Danielle Hunter. You went out and added all these other veterans that's actually going to elevate the damn good production you already had from the previous year. You know, we just finished talking about the excitement of Stefon Diggs and the fact that you now have a wide receiving core that has gotten 10 times better just with Stefon Diggs alone. Even when you take a look at the offensive backfield in terms of the trade with Joe Mixon, it's like, okay, you already have running back one. Do you want to give Dameon Pierce an opportunity to, you know, see what he can do and take to him as running back two? However, John, they are not done, and they're going to continue to add the players that they feel that can elevate every single position. Because look, they have their eyes set on the grand prize come February, and the way things are looking as of right now, it definitely seems like that they will have a realistic shot in 2024.
I think once Houston moved out from 23, that's where we figured that we'll see them trade for a receiver, right?
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, One thing that I love is we don't really know who and what is on a draft board and where they
Not
rank.
this year. It's not easy like last year.
It's not right. I mean, last year you knew that with that first overall pick or within those first couple of picks, that how the season played out, they'll be drafting a quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
The year before that, we knew that one of those corners would be coming to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, the speculation I think has been fun because we don't know. And with that, who's to say that who's to say that their draft board wasn't always prioritizing these two positions first
Mm-hmm.
in the draft because of how they went about free agency? Like, who's to say that with them signing Okuda and Henderson, who's to say that they still don't have a cornerback that they really like that made sense for them to trade back from 23 to 42 because they believe that cornerback will be available between 37 and 42. That still gives them a wiggle room to trade up if they want to, or if that player falls to them. Who's to say that safety was never out of the question for them because that's where they had it on the draft board? Like, when I hear we're not altering the draft board, of course, that's super intelligent. I think the only thing that you may not have to, draft immediately is a wide receiver now.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that they won't draft one late. Uh, but who's to say that Houston never prioritized a linebacker first? They met with Adrian Cooper, right? Who's to say that they never prioritized on their draft board certain positions / certain players that they feel would bring in the value that they need to also help them get over the hump and continue being a very strong team. One thing that we know about Nick Caserio is he knows the value in creating the dynasty. And he
Mm-hmm.
understands that you have to make sure that, again, your bottom isn't as far from your ceiling as a lot of the bad teams are. New England was never, the bottom was never that far from the ceiling, right? I know you had Brady to help that ceiling be high, but they did a very good job of drafting. And when I look at Nick, when I look at D'Amico, I think that, they hit on corner in the offseason. They hit on linebacker in the offseason, D tackle in the offseason. Who's to say that they don't have guys like, again, a Tyler Nubin that could be available at 42 at safety? The young kid from Michigan, or the kid that they met with, Phillips, the cornerback from Kentucky, that could be available at 42. We just don't know what their draft board is. And so them not altering their draft board isn't shocking to me, because what I've come to know about this team with the combination of D'Amico and Nick Caserio is their plan is their plan, and they're going to stick to it. They're going to add to it. And I think that's how you build a successful franchise. Hey guys, I know buying tickets can be a frustrating experience, especially if you're trying to get some last minute tickets to maybe the Astros game right before the first pitch. But I'm happy to let you know Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for the MLB, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They have last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying those last minute tickets for sports, concert, comedy, and theater events near you. With the views from your seat, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And my favorite part, the best part of it all, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a ticket in the same section and row for less. Go to GameTime.com or download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah. thanks with Tank, man. Tank is back. He's starting to get in with our guys here at the offseason program. So excited to have Tank back. You know, that was a devastating loss for us last year, losing him. He's such a dynamic player for us, such an inspiration for myself, for a lot of our team. So I'm excited to see Tank back working with our guys, and excited to see him make that same jump that I talked about year 1 and year 2.
That was Coach D'Amico Ryans talking about the ongoing rehab process of wide receiver Tank Dell. As you guys saw, ever since the end of the 2023 season, we have seen several videos of Tank Dell looking really good, going through his rehab process, because look, we understand it doesn't matter if they had Stefon Diggs or not. Tank Dell was going to play a very important role for this organization in 2024, and it's good to hear and know that he is on a track to a speedy recovery. And as you guys just heard, he would definitely be on the field for training camp. But John, once again, as I'm sitting inside NRG Stadium, you know, there are certain things that I pick up on in terms of listening to players talk. And of course, CJ, just like D'Amico, had a lot of questions come his way about Stefon Diggs. And everybody saw the video that he did a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the social media influence name, so forgive me. I can't remember his name, but it was him, it was CJ, it was Diggs, it was Mechie, and it was Tank Dell. And every time CJ talked about, you know, the training that he has done with his wide receiving core up until this point, there was one name that he kept throwing around a lot, and that name was John Mechie. Every time that you mention John Mechie, from what you've seen so far, what type of impact do you think he'd be able to have on this offense?
Man, he has a ton of value, a huge impact I think that he'll bring this season. I think last year was good to get his feet back in the water, you know, coming off of an injury, then something so traumatic like being sick, how he was. And man, his mindset is just, you know, he's ready to come back and ball. So not only is he a great football player, but he's a great person. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else with anybody else other than those guys in that room. So Mechie's looking amazing. Everything that he'll put on this field will be no surprise. But you know, I think everybody in his room knows how special he can be, and he'll put that on the field.
You know, that put a big smile on my face. Man, look, it was so good to hear CJ Stroud, you know, just rave about John Mechie. Even before I asked him that question, as I just mentioned, every time he talked about his wide receiving core and how they look, and he kept going back to how great John Mechie looked. And John, as I sat there, I just thought about all the conversations that you and I had about Mechie throughout this whole entire offseason as of right now. And I kept saying, this is going to be the year that we see John Mechie get close to, or even be the player that the Houston Texans traded up for and drafted in 2022. Yes, it's unfortunate. We already know his story about the cancer and the ACL tear and all that other stuff. And we already know that 2023 was basically a red shirt year for him. CJ says similar words as well. But to me, John, it just makes me excited, not only for John Mechie as the player, as a person, but to know that this wide receiving core could be even deadlier when you think about the potential that John Mechie is going to add.
Yeah, I think this is Houston's most complete wide receiver group in franchise history.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt.
I mean, legit 2 number ones. A number 1A, 1B, you know, 2 when you look at 2. Yeah. Right, however you want to look at it with Tank, I mean, I think he can be that explosive for this offense. And then, again, going back to my words earlier in the show, I just think John Mechie is in a perfect position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last year, I was a victim. I can't say we. I was a victim of just genuinely being happy for him, but also wanting to see those breakout moments. And it didn't happen, really. And at one point, I think he went 11 for 11 in terms of targets and reception, something like that. He didn't drop a pass in his first few catches, but he didn't have any wild moments. He didn't have his moment. There was one moment that almost came against the Broncos, I believe, where
he
him
was
and
open.
CJ was wide open, and
And
one of
CJ
those
kind of
walk-ins.
overthrew him.
Yeah, and that was a moment where I was like, oh, that was a John Mechie moment.
Oh,
Because we all want to see the celebration, right? We want to see it in the NRG Stadium. So I fell victim to that. And Cody, you did a very good job of reminding me and the listeners and viewers that, hey, listen, this is first year back in 2 years to give him time. But I think for this year, what works in his favor, again, you're going to be under a very good teacher of knowing how to win routes at the NFL level. And I do think that towards the end of the year, maybe fatigue or maybe just, still getting his feet wet, we didn't see John Mechie create the separation that we thought we would, we wanted to see rather. So you'll be getting that in your bag. You'll be having another year of NFL nutrition, NFL workout programs, a full offseason workout program. So you'll have another year of a lot of things that's playing in his favor. But the expectations for me right now isn't as high as they were last year because the excitement isn't there in the sense of I don't want to overdo it to myself. But I think the role that he can be in and thrive in right now as a guy that can come in and now be interchangeable with a lot of these guys, right? At his peak potential-wise, you can have games where you're seeing John Mechie out there for 50% of the snaps on offense. Right? You can see moments where he just may get it going and, maybe we want to pull Nico out real quick, or maybe we want to, use him and Tank Dell a little differently right now. So I like the spot he's in. I think he's going to be comfortable in this spot for right now. And I think because of that, he'll shock the world.
I'm kind of glad I'm not CJ at this moment. Because just thinking of what I mean by that is just thinking of if John Mechie, like I mentioned, could get to the player that he was at Alabama, and it's probably fun for him, but just on the outside looking in, like, man, you got to find a way to get touches to Nico, Tank, Stefon, John, and that's not including Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz, and Xavier Hutchinson. If he takes that leap in year 2 like we hoping, but then again, just for a split moment, just go with me. What type of offense are we about to see?
Man, listen. You know who's smiling at all of this?
Nick.
Well, yeah, but Joe Mixon.
Oh, my God.
And by the way, I want you guys to know how deadly Stefon Diggs has been the last couple of years of play actions with Josh Allen in Buffalo. I mean, they've been a pretty good play action team. So
you're not talking about the final 5 games where he didn't crack over 100 receiving yards? Are you sure you're not about to talk about that?
Did that bother D'Amico?
I don't think so, because he told us that, he put on the tape and what he saw he wanted and got it.
If it didn't bother D'Amico Ryans, it ain't gonna bother me. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun offense. It is up to Bobby Sloag to not get in his way.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. We will have a guest this week. Stay tuned. But I'm John, some sports guy Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.